everyone. Welcome to another episode of Pathways and Paychecks. Today we have someone who's held some interesting positions. I feel like people hear these terms all the time, but don't really know what goes into the positions. One is R&D, which is research and development, and the other one is regulatory affairs. So we're going to talk to Rohan today, and he's going to tell us how he went about his career to being where he is today. So welcome on the show. Thank you for being here.
Oh, I'm glad to be here, Drusty. Yeah.
I know you guys came from a little mini trip a
Yeah.
couple weeks ago, and then you've had to do a little bit of traveling too.
Yeah.
So how did that go before you get started?
No, the trip was good. The trip was good. I know we're going to talk about, work journeys and whatnot. I think, so, as you know, we went out to Iceland. So it was just Ruchi, my wife, and then myself. And it was, about 2 weeks out there, a lot of hiking. And I think that kind of trip gives you that sense of like purpose as to why you do what you do, and then
Yeah.
also like thinking about like what is it that you want from life, and how does your career fit
Yeah.
into that, and the fact that I was able to actually go on that trip, and so as we'll probably talk later, I'm in regulatory affairs, and so a big part of my job is to be involved in audits. And so when I had booked the trip, when we booked the trip back in November, I did not realize that this was going to clash with an ongoing audit, where I should have been present, you know um,
Kind of worked out
it worked.
anyway.
It worked out just fine. So yeah,
That's good. That's good. I love what you said. Yeah, I definitely agree. I feel like you need a little time off from
yeah,
just your regular work life to
yeah,
make room for just space for your mental.
yeah,
I don't know. I'm trying to think of a good word. Just like rejuvenating yourself and
yeah,
resetting yourself. So that's awesome.
yeah,
So tell us a little bit about how you ended up picking the first part of your career, which is R&D.
yeah,
And when you kind of moved, so you went to college in New Jersey. That's where you were kind of
yeah.
raised, and how you chose that.
Yeah, so when I came to the U.S. As a 15-year-old, it was sort of like this stereotypical thing. You're choose becoming a doctor, engineer, pharmacist, lawyer, right? And so I was thinking to myself, well, I do okay in school. I do okay in undergrad. I did not like to write, so I knew the liberal arts were not really going to be a place that I was going to pursue an education in. And I thought, well, maybe medical school, maybe engineering. So let me take the easy way out and do biomedical engineering. But I think there's also a sort of historic connection, because when I was in sixth grade in India, we used to get the newspaper. And I remember picking up the newspaper, and that was when Dolly had happened, when genetic had reached its really big milestone. And I remember looking at it and thinking it was very cool. And I told my dad, just nonchalant, hey, I would like to go to the U.S. To do this, kind of education, if you will. And so the closest thing to genetic and engineering was
Yeah,
biomedical engineering. And so that's what got me into doing biomedical engineering in New York City.
that's
And
awesome.
uh, and then the R&D part, I think, for biomedical, I mean, so yeah, why not medical school? Didn't do medical school because I wanted to work, I wanted to make some money. And so, and medical school seemed 4 more years of education and paying for that. And so,
Right.
thought to myself, like, maybe we can do it later, but let's look at getting a job. And usually for a lot of biomedical engineers, working in industry, it's R&D or quality or marketing first up. But research seemed the easiest transition, because in my pursuit of wanting to do medical school, I was doing research on
Okay.
campus at my school. So I did, research in as an undergrad in organic chemistry, and so I thought,
Hmm.
well, I do some kind of research right now. Let's just look for a job in R&D.
Yeah, that's great. I like how you still had considered, what you were passionate about, when you were younger. Because a lot of times, like when I was younger, I would joke about. I mean, I don't know if it was a joke, but I said I would say I want to be a cardiologist just because
Yeah,
I like the word when I was like really young.
yeah,
So I don't like when people are younger, it doesn't really mean anything. But I like that little story or the piece of news that you read made an impact on you, and you kind of continued that passion.
yeah,
Um, and even though you weren't like pursuing or like you thought about pursuing medical school, but then the research part
yeah,
kind of still helped you
yeah,
develop some of your skills, which you kind of translated into your first job. So that's great.
yeah, yeah. Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so just transitioning, because like you mentioned, like majoring in biomedical engineering. What are some other routes people could take? And you talked about the industry. That's like a major
Yeah,
one which you chose. But what are some of the
yeah.
other options someone could consider?
Yeah, so so just take I guess somewhat of a step back, or rather, talk about, I've had a few different jobs, but throughout my career, it's always been in the medical device industry. Um,
Mm.
so biomedical engineers can go into the medical device industry or
Mm-hmm.
pharma. Those are the two big
Mm-hmm.
industries that they go into. I also have classmates that are in finance and stuff like that. Just New York City, engineering going into Wall Street is also fairly common. But in terms of an industry perspective, so like I said, worked in medical device industry, still in the medical device industry, and
Mm-hmm.
and I think one of the ironic things I found about being in the medical device industry was that when looking for jobs, back in 2008, most medical device companies, the engineers that work there have degrees in the basic engineering or the classic engineering, mechanical engineering, chemical
Mm.
engineering, um, electrical engineering, computer engineering, what I call like the fundamental engineering, and not
Right.
necessarily
Okay.
biomedical engineering. Biomedical engineering, it's sort of like going to a buffet. You get a little bit of everything,
Mm.
um, but you, that's the aspect in terms of education tying into the industry. But yes, a lot of biomedical engineers do go into the medical device industry. But
Okay.
if I could go back, I'd probably do a degree in more of the fundamental engineering. Probably materials engineering, which is sort of what is the aspect that I deal with mostly on a day-to-day
Okay.
basis is the materials engineering part. So probably would have done materials
Hmm.
engineering, and then for my master's done,
Okay.
biomedical engineering or done materials engineering, work in the same job that I'm
Hmm.
in right now. But
Hmm. Interesting. That's good to know. That's especially like I feel like from these interviews, people who've had experience in the field and the actual jobs
yeah,
are able to give such insights which you can't get, someone starting fresh. So that was good.
yeah,
Um, all right. So talk a little bit about your first half of your career, and
yeah.
then you chose North Carolina just because of a job, correct?
Well, I would say North Carolina chose me, but yeah, that's how I ended up moving to North Carolina. But yeah, I think North
We're so glad
Carolina
about it
chose,
though.
yeah, and it worked out in the well.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah,
Got
North
it.
Carolina chose me, I guess. Yeah.
So what does your like day to day look like when you're in the like when you were holding jobs in the like as a product engineer or a product specialist?
Yeah, so the role that I had in North Carolina was at a company called Teleflex, and I was in product development engineering. And product development engineering is sort of like the later aspect to an R&D project. We call it the D of the
Mm-hmm.
R&D, research and development. So it's the D part of the
Hmm.
R&D
Okay.
aspect. And day to day product development engineering, it's split between being in the lab. So let's say you have a prototype device or you're making a prototype device. You may be testing it, in a bench setting, or you could be
Mm-hmm.
doing it in an animal lab. You could be doing
Okay.
it in a clinical trial setting. But I would say the split is about 50% in the lab, and the other
Mm-hmm.
50% is just meeting with your teams, because it's such a cross-functional effort. So you would meet with
Mm-hmm.
your folks that are, let's say, the scientists who deal with the early stage research part, maybe with the marketing folks who talk to you about, hey, this is what the user, the clinician, actually
Mm-hmm.
wants. Um, Quality who gives you insights into these other different ways that we can ensure that the testing is done appropriately, or the device meets its specification. So but
Mm.
50% in the lab, and then 50%
Okay.
in meetings, or
Mm-hmm.
or
Makes sense.
sitting at your desk, writing out the documentation and things of that sort.
Mm-hmm.
The percentage that you spend in the lab decreases the further up you move in your
Mm.
career, because then you are, um, you know, engaging more with the cross functions. So that's more in a room, sitting with people, talking to stakeholders, both in internal as well as external. So the switch of
Mm.
how much time you want to, the amount of time you spend in the lab generally decreases.
Okay, makes sense. I know for a majority of your jobs, the
Yeah.
first half, they've all been remote, right?
Yeah, so we talked about North Carolina, and I joked about how North Carolina chose me. So I think within a week of moving to North Carolina, I fell in love with the place, and I
Mm-hmm.
told myself, why did I not move before? So,
Mm-hmm.
came to the U.S. in 2002. Most of my time then was spent in the tri-state area.
Mm-hmm.
New Jersey, and New York, and then in Connecticut. Didn't really think about moving to the south, to North Carolina, but just work brought me here. But I fell in love with North Carolina, and
Mm-hmm.
then 4 years into working at Teleflex, I met the love of my life, who was originally from Massachusetts, and I thought, well,
Mm-hmm.
not sure if she would want to continue to live in Raleigh, or whether she would
Mm-hmm.
want to move to Massachusetts. So that led me to looking for remote jobs, because
Makes sense.
you could go around the U.S.,
Yeah.
if you will, but that is challenging, because I spoke to you about the aspect of being in the lab 50%. So
Right.
how was I going to get these
Makes
big
sense.
test equipment animals
Right.
at home? So that's the part which made it challenging, looking for a remote job when you were in
Mm-hmm.
in in R&D.
Got it. That makes sense. Very interesting. Yeah. All right. So that was definitely your first half. So let's talk a little bit about how the second half of your job is. How did you transition into regulatory affairs?
Yeah, so it's funny, because at my current job, which is in regulatory affairs, I tell folks that I've only been in regulatory affairs for the time that I've been at my current job, which is at Becton Dickinson, where I've been for about 2 years. But prior to that, I got into the role of being a regulator. I think
Hmm.
a good amount of your listeners are probably in the U.S. The regulator would be similar to the FDA, except my job was in European regulations. I worked on um, as a European regulator, and that just happened by chance. It happened by
Okay.
chance because I used to spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. I still do,
Mm-hmm.
just to uh, keep myself in touch with what's going on in the professional world.
Absolutely.
And so I was clicking around on LinkedIn, and I guess a recruiter must have noticed me clicking on their profile, and they were recruiting for this company called BSI that I'd never heard of, who were looking for folks that had primarily worked in R&D for
Mm-hmm.
remote jobs,
Hmm.
as technical reviewers. And that's what led me into that job.
Okay. Pretty cool. Um, what does your day to day look like with this job?
So the current day to day, so I've got three people reporting to me right now, and my day to day is probably 80% is meetings. So,
Okay.
meetings in large team settings or in one-on-one settings. Um,
Mm-hmm.
th- as somebody working in regulatory affairs, our deliverable is the actual submission. So if you have made
Mm-hmm.
a cool device, I work in hernia meshes right now. You make a new hernia mesh. The regulatory
Mm.
affairs folks are the ones that actually submit that to the FDA and other
Oh, okay.
regulators to allow the company to then be able to sell after you get FDA clearance or approval or other regulator
Mm.
clearance or approval. So that's what the regulatory teams does. It's the deliverables part. Um,
Makes sense.
I think I have it easy in the sense that I'm not responsible for any deliverables. It's the team that I work with that is working on these deliverables.
Mm.
But then, if you go back from a day-to-day perspective,
Mm-hmm.
that's the 50% aspect of the lab part for my team is that 50% time when they're spending individually focused
Mm-hmm.
on writing these submissions. So that's what they do,
Mm.
you know, from their home settings or in the office setting, really ensuring that you have thorough,
Mm-hmm.
detail-oriented, you know, submissions that ensure that the device is safe and
Mm-hmm.
efficacious, and you can communicate that to the
Mm-hmm.
agency. So, from my perspective, it's really looking at the strategy,
Makes sense.
looking at supporting them. But
Mm-hmm.
the deliverables part is it's their
Okay.
names that goes into the submissions.
Okay.
So
Okay. That's a fun position, I think.
yeah.
A couple questions about it. So, what are some of the skill sets you think come along um, with especially with this position? Then we can talk a little
Yeah.
bit about the other one too.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest skill set is people, is
Mm-hmm.
knowing how to build relationships. I mean, that's when so when I'm now looking for an additional person on my team, and that's the number one thing we'll
Mm.
look for is how are they able to build relationships. So I spoke to you about the thing that a regulatory person does, which is write the submissions, but at the end of the day it still comes down to being able to talk to the FDA.
Mm.
In general, you do not do a submission and not have either a virtual interaction through an email with
Mm-hmm.
the agency or an actual meeting. So there's some element of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so being able to connect to people, and then from an internal perspective, being able to ensure that if the engineer's got the best design idea, but is that translated into the actual
Mm.
documentation? So I think the people skills part is
Mm.
the most important aspect of
Mm.
a regulatory job, as compared to I
Okay.
tell my friends in R&D, like, you could be the smartest cookie, and
Mm.
you could thrive in an R&D role even if you're not the nicest person,
Yeah.
shall you say. But you could be the smartest person as
Mm-hmm.
regulatory affairs
Yeah.
associate or manager,
Mm-hmm.
but then if you're not nice
Yeah.
to internal people or to external people,
Yeah.
you could really be in a challenging situation. But I think the
Right.
people part, and then I think just the basic sciences and just having
Mm-hmm.
curiosity,
Yeah.
in engineering, again, regardless of what engineering you're in, there's an aspect of benefit and risk, right? So being
Mm-hmm.
able to say how much is enough,
Yeah.
from a testing perspective, or
Mm-hmm.
what risk can we take because of the benefits
Mm-hmm.
that we have. So really thinking about it from that perspective, and that's where the basic STEM
Mm-hmm.
education does really help. You don't have to have a basic STEM
Mm-hmm.
education, because uh, I think engineering and sciences are
Mm-hmm.
are just curiosities, and they're you
Yeah.
don't have to be trained into them. There are
Mm-hmm.
some people who are innately curious and innately
Yeah.
logic minded, and so just having
Mm-hmm.
that ability to think analytically, critically,
Yeah.
does help.
Yeah, that's very helpful. I know you had talked about a few ones already, like attention to detail and a little bit of writing, but looks
The
like analytical skills and like people skills definitely kind of top those. So that's good to know.
Yeah, yeah. The attention to detail part is quite important, because
Mm-hmm.
you would when you send something to the agency, when you send something to a regulator outside, it's a
Absolutely.
document that's being sent, and so
Mm-hmm.
the messaging has to be
Mm-hmm.
clear.
Right.
This isn't where you want to make typos and things of
Yeah.
that nature. So
Absolutely.
especially you think about it in terms of this is you are the final
Mm-hmm.
gate as a
Yeah.
regulatory person before something goes to the agency, and then
Yeah.
once it gets cleared, it'll go into a patient's body. So yeah, the attention to
Yeah.
detail part is definitely important,
Mm-hmm.
along with
Awesome.
the people skills part
Yeah.
and
I
stuff. So
definitely agree.
yeah,
Good stuff. Okay, couple more questions I was thinking of. Let's hit some of the pros and cons of just being in this industry or
yeah,
this job. Because I feel like you could be passionate about something, but if the cons kind of outweigh the pros for you, maybe it's not
yeah,
for you.
yeah. Do you mean more from an industry perspective? Do you mean more from a regulatory function perspective? Like what aspect are you thinking?
I guess both. So
Yeah,
like, yeah, if the industry is for someone or not, and then secondly,
yeah,
yeah, if the regulatory part is kind of built for them or not.
yeah. So the industry part is interesting, right? I mean, the fact that you can make something that could change a patient's life. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's the um, there's
No
just an
huge
as
reward.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's a huge reward. You're in healthcare too, so
Mm-hmm.
I know you
Yeah.
understand that part, right? And so being able to work on something, because there is a lot of unmet needs. I mean, on a daily basis,
Mm-hmm.
I come across through my work, patients that have needs, clinicians that have needs that aren't being met, in spite of us being in the technologically progress world that we live in.
Mm-hmm.
So that element is definitely one of the more satisfying things with the job, is knowing what the end result of your work is going to be. There comes with that the challenge of just all the documentation that goes in, all the rigor that goes in. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
when you see a medical device being cleared by the FDA, it's probably been worked on for 5-10 years at the minimum, if not longer.
Yeah. So true. It's definitely a slow process.
Yeah, it's definitely a long process, because you want to make sure that everything is thought through, right? Like we tell
Mm-hmm.
folks that you cannot time travel. So I work in the
Mm-hmm.
world of implantable devices. So these are devices that go into a person's body and stay there forever, or they go
Mm-hmm.
away after a while, after they've done their work. But there comes with that that you know need to make sure that the device is working properly, and then also crucially also not causing issues, that
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
unintended issues. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why the rigor is a lot longer. That's why an Apple can come out with a new iPhone on an every year
Mm-hmm.
basis. uh,
Yeah.
that's much harder in the medical device industry, and that's challenging. So that's challenging because
Mm-hmm.
I think people, when they work on things, they want, they're an action oriented. I'm an action oriented person. I'm working on this. I want it to have some results. And so there
Mm-hmm.
are results, but it just takes a lot longer. There are many more milestones. So that is definitely a challenging part. I think compared to
Mm-hmm.
pharma,
Yeah.
it's definitely a faster trajectory than pharma. I think in pharma it probably takes twice or thrice as long. On
Mm.
just a
Yeah.
all
Yeah,
ballpark from
yeah. No, I agree.
so
Mm-hmm. Because the testing and everything,
yeah,
because there's so many phases of testing too, even that, and
yeah.
yeah, they take forever too. I definitely agree. Um, oh yeah, that again you kind of listed some of the. But what do you think of some of the cons? Like, who do you think this career is not meant for, or something that could deter someone from pursuing such a career?
Um, I mean, I think, like I said, just the amount of time it takes folks, right? So I remember I was at a role once, and there was a person that worked in the automobile industry, really brilliant mechanical engineer. Design came naturally to him, like he was born. I think being able to think in three dimensions, think about mechanical design, wanted to, look into the healthcare world, and got a job in the medical device industry, and within 2 weeks he quit.
Hmm.
He said, I'm spending 10% of my time doing design and
Hmm.
90% of my time actually writing the documentation, because even when you're in the lab, you keep testing,
True.
and there's all these meetings and there's all that rigor.
Mm-hmm.
The actual
Yeah.
time you spend doing design,
Hmm.
like what somebody may do in another industry.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if you're looking for uh, fast results as an engineer, there are probably you know um, other industries that warrant your
Yeah.
consideration more than the medical device industry. I think
Okay.
that's one of the cons. I also think the element of, today it is a world where where more and more roles are going increasingly remote. Um, I
Mm-hmm.
I think just with the nature of the work, there's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of actual uh, uh, thinking, a lot of work in the medical device industry that still happens in a clinical setting. So it happens in
Mm-hmm.
a hospital setting. So if you're in early stage R&D, or even in marketing
Mm-hmm.
in the medical device industry, a lot of the work happens in
Yeah.
an OR. So you go to the OR, you see
Yeah.
how things are being used. So that aspect is, if you want to have 100% remote job,
Right.
it gets harder. Now I do have a hundred
Yeah.
percent remote job, but it does still mean that I have to engage with my team and engage in
Mm-hmm.
these kind of things every so often. So I think for people that want a 100% remote job at the beginning of their career, the
Mm-hmm.
medical device industry is going to be a hard one
That's fair.
for them to get into. And I think also, I work in a large medical device company. I mean, my company is in the top 10 medical device
Mm-hmm.
companies
Mm-hmm.
in the US in terms of revenue, if you will. In large medical device companies, a lot of interaction is
Mm-hmm.
happening in person as well. So, you know,
Yeah.
for people that are looking to switch into the medical device industries later in their career as well and want to do 100% remote, I think it can be um,
Mm.
uh, somewhat hard. Regulatory
Yeah.
affairs is a function where you can still do a lot of work remote, but
Mm-hmm.
there's
Yeah.
still every so often where you want to engage.
Mm-hmm.
What other cons? I wouldn't necessarily call it as a con if you enjoy teamwork. This
Mm-hmm.
is an awesome industry to be in, just because there are
Yeah.
so many specialized functions.
Mm-hmm.
Or like I said, R&D, regulatory, two ones that I worked in,
Yeah.
marketing,
Mm. True.
sales, quality, clinical. But it is a team setting, so you do get that team
Mm-hmm.
atmosphere. But if you like to work individually, not sure if this is really the industry for people to 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 look into.
Yeah, I think you hit a lot of good points. I like those. All right. I know we've covered a lot of good things. And as you know, we always try to cover like some salary ranges. So I
Yeah,
might just get you to list that. And it could be like just range, start with
yeah,
someone kind of starting in to,
yeah,
moving up. And then also like I'll let you describe if R&D and regulatory are kind of like lateral or if they have like a hierarchy.
yeah. Oh, the salary part is interesting, right? I think um, these days, when you get in the medical device industry, you're looking roughly at a 70K, give or
Mm-hmm.
take 10% ballpark,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of the function you go into. I think that's the ballpark you were in. there is definitely a career ladder and an upward trajectory that you can follow, especially when you're in a larger medical device company. You
Right.
can go all the way up to CEO level. But I would say in general, is there a difference in pay between R&D and regulatory? Not that I'm aware of, but I
Okay.
could be
Right.
I'm just a small fish in a
Mm-hmm.
big pond. So not that I'm aware of, but from talking to my friends and my professional network, there
Mm-hmm.
doesn't really seem to be a difference per
Makes
se.
sense.
Um, but then, I will say one thing with salary, for those that are looking into the healthcare world part, I definitely think pharma pays a lot better than medical device industry. I'm not sure what it is
Hmm.
about that. Maybe it's the
Okay.
aspect that it takes much longer, so you have to be a lot more patient. But from the people that I talk to that are in pharma that have equivalent jobs,
Mm-hmm.
pharma does um, pay better than the
Yeah.
medical device industry, at least 10 to 20% more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the same for us too. Like other settings compared to pharma industry are definitely a lot higher.
Yeah,
I guess it's just, yeah, like you said, maybe the nature
yeah,
of the job, or could just be all the benefits they get because of
yeah,
there's a huge portion of like sales attached to it too, which
yeah,
they could get bonuses and things like that too. So,
yeah,
but that's good to know.
yeah.
All right, I think we've covered some great topics. Is there anything else you would like to add on
No,
before we wrap up?
no, I mean, I will say, I love my job, and it's
Mm-hmm.
it's like I love the every position I've held it quite dear.
Mm-hmm.
That has contributed me moving into the next position that I'm in. I think for people that listen to this that are, I would definitely suggest, looking at the medical device industry. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
made me a better professional, but also a better person, because
Yeah.
you look at the data, you look at risk benefit, and you apply that to your everyday life as well. And I think it makes you a better person. The team aspect I love as well. I made
Mm-hmm.
some good friends. I know
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of controversial to say that these days, like making friends at work, if you will, because there's that separation that people want from
Yeah.
work and life. But I've made some really awesome
Mm-hmm.
friends, through my job. People I still keep in touch with, really good
Mm-hmm.
friends that I'm making at my current job as well. So I
Yeah.
definitely think people should look into the medical device industry and regulatory
Mm-hmm.
as a function.
That's awesome. One or two more things before we end. So, one, if someone wanted to transition like mid career or from another industry, what would their scope or what would they need to do to try to get here?
Yeah, I think it goes back to the skill set, right? So
Okay.
you ask yourself, like, what are the skill sets I have? Really
Mm-hmm.
set aside your technical skills and your soft skills,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So your technical skills could be uh, strong
Mm-hmm.
coding skills, for
Yeah.
example, right? And you may have some
Mm-hmm.
soft skills like teamwork and
Mm-hmm.
self starter X, Y, and Z.
Right.
I think that's what I would look at, and then think about
Okay.
where is it that would fit into the medical
Mm-hmm.
device industry. And I think it goes back to I've definitely seen people do that. Like I just gave you a
Mm-hmm.
hypothetical example of a software engineer. Let's say somebody
Yeah.
that's working in a traditional software engineering field. Let's say they may be a back end
Mm-hmm.
developer, at
Mm-hmm.
a software company. They could definitely transition into the medical device industry. There's a lot of software. It's the hottest thing right now
That's
in
good to
medical
know.
devices is
Yeah.
software as a medical device. So there's definitely
Yeah. True.
points of engagement. If you're in finance, if you're, I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
if you're a financial analyst for
Yeah.
an S&P 5, for S&P
Mm-hmm.
5, for Moody's or something of that sort,
Mm-hmm.
you could look into an equivalent job within
True.
the medical device industry as well. So I think there's definitely
Mm-hmm.
points of engagement, especially for functions like finance, marketing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think the R&D part as well, dependent on whether you were in a technical field, that one comes through.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely, but I think if you go back to the drawing board and look at, hey, what are the skills I have, soft
Mm-hmm.
skills
Yeah.
and hard skills, technical skills, and
Mm-hmm.
then what do I want
Yeah.
to do with my career, right? What do I
Yeah, I
want to
agree.
what do you want to? You could be a graphic designer. So
Mm-hmm.
on Thursday when I was at my office, I was talking to somebody, and she works in labeling, and I asked her, hey, how did she get into labeling
Mm-hmm.
for medical
Yeah.
devices? She started in publishing. She was
Wow.
a graphic a fashion major turned into a graphic designer,
I did not
uh,
see that coming.
and I think she worked for a publishing company and then eventually moved that into labeling in medical devices. So there's
That's
definitely
true. There's so many minor or like, so many random things that within an
yeah
industry. So I agree, like you mentioned, just figuring out your skills
yeah
and like things that you're interested in and then just going from there. But I agree, like just networking, talking to people, will
yeah
definitely help you find what you were looking for.
and listening to the
Well,
podcast.
exactly. I don't know why people are not listening to this
Yeah,
podcast yet.
yeah, and listening
But
to the
hopefully
podcast.
soon we'll get
Yeah,
more listeners.
yeah,
All
absolutely.
right, this is great. Thank you so much for coming on today and sharing everything that you did today.
All right. Thank you.
All
I
right.
enjoyed this.
Thank you.
Yeah.